And welcome back to the desk here at the 2024 Mackinac Policy Conference. I am joined by Rapson, of course, of Kresge. So good to have you back at the desk.
This is so fun to be here. It's nice to see you here.
It's really good to see you here. So you were on a panel earlier during the conference talking about all things Detroit. I mean, Detroit has gotten some good news, let's just say, over the past few weeks. I mean, the draft, this latest about population growth.
Well, and I think one of the things that Valerie Jarrett said in her session was how, to an outside world, we really do seem to be getting a lot of things right in Detroit. Certainly as a state, the governor is providing great leadership, and I think there's a sense of bipartisanship here on the island. But Detroit is really moving forward. We still have all sorts of challenges, as we don't need to remind anyone of.
Yeah.
But between the draft and between the population growth and some of the really good moves in the neighborhoods and along the Woodward corridor, I think this is a good time for Detroit.
That's what I'm so curious about, because you and I have been to one of these conferences once or twice in our history.
30 or 40
and
times.
It feels like every year it's this sort of like, bet on the city. Let's be optimistic. But does this feel a little different right now in terms of the optimism, that it's a little less like, come on, stay positive, versus like, no, we really are?
I think so. I mean, there is always, I think, hesitancy on the part of Detroiters not to get overconfident or not to claim that things were so bad for all of the folks who sort of stuck it out and were resilient over all of those years. Yeah. You don't want to really send the impression that now we're getting it right, whereas those folks were getting it wrong. Yeah. But I think what's happening is that those two worlds are coming together. We're doing better in the neighborhoods. We're doing better on education. We're doing better on physical redevelopment. We're doing better on housing. We're doing better on creating new wealth. And we're also, I think, projecting into a future in a very different, more confident sort of way.
But it also means having conversations about the city of Detroit and whose city it is.
Well, and I think that is also a changing conversation. Yeah. I think increasingly we understand that Detroit can be a city both for residents who have put their roots down here for a long time and also be welcoming to new residents. And that the new residents, black, white, any color, any ethnicity, really have a lot to contribute. And I think that's what we're seeing, is it's a new alchemy in the city in which all of the pieces end up reinforcing one another.
Kresge is celebrating 100 years.
Yeah, so am I think. Yeah.
I was going to say that face. Talk to me about just sort of the lifeblood that is Kresge and the city, what 100 years has meant, and neither of us will be here, but what the next 100 could look like.
Well, when you think about it, there aren't that many institutions that have been around for 100 years. And so starting in the early part of the century, S.S. Kresge really had a vision of wanting to create an entity that would endure well beyond his lifetime and his son's lifetime and his grandson's lifetime. And that's why he created the Kresge Foundation. And I think what we have done is create an entity that both can respond in the moment to the kinds of things that afflict any city, like a bankruptcy or an economic downturn, but also help position a city as circumstances change. So things like a rail project or a Marygrove campus or any number of other things. And I think that's what we're proud of, is that not only have we sort of changed with the times, but there's also been a constancy of purpose, which is to put down our roots deeply in Detroit, make sure that we're always working on behalf of the citizens in Detroit, and now try to figure out what's next. I mean, what are some of the challenges that the community will face into the future, and how can we be helpful?
Well, I think I have to ask that question. What is next, then?
Well, I think there are a lot of growing pains that Detroit still has to go through. We really have to bring down the wealth gap. We have to make sure that the neighborhoods of Detroit are full neighborhoods of opportunity for all residents. We have to help other communities across the country learn what we've learned in Detroit. We have a lot of conversation with places like Memphis and New Orleans and Fresno and Baltimore and Minneapolis and St. Paul. They're deeply interested in what we've done in Detroit, and we have a lot to learn from them, to be sure. But I think it's an interesting challenge to think about what have we as a community gone through that might be of help to other American cities.
Well, Rip Rapson, again, congratulations on 100 years, and here's to the next 100.
It's a terrifying thought, but thank you.
I appreciate the time, as always.
Thank you.